Welcome back to Maintenance Monday. Today I want to explain how to stop your disc brakes rubbing and also how to face a disc brake mount, because if you can't stop your brakes rubbing and you've tried all of the usual tricks, this could be the solution to your problem. First, let's make sure you've tried the simple fixes and easy adjustments. So that means that the wheel is located centrally into the dropouts on the frame. Check that the brake rotor isn't bent. Check that the pistons move freely in the caliper when you pull the brake. And then, most crucially of all, check that the caliper is positioned centrally with a disc brake rotor. This is usually the most common and simple adjustment that you'll make by loosening off the two bolts holding the caliper to the frame, pulling the brake to centralize the caliper, and then doing the bolts back up to the correct torque specification for the brake and the frame that you're using. This is usually between 5 to 10 Newton meters, but it's going to depend on the exact setup of your bike. If you've done all of the above and are still sat there screaming at your bike because the brakes are still rubbing, well, you might have a slightly bigger problem on your hands, and that is that the face between the frame and the caliper isn't level or has got some excess paint on it, which is causing the caliper not to sit at the correct angle to the disc brake rotor. Yes, I can appreciate there might be some people sat at home laughing at this problem with your rim brakes, but I'd ask the question, what are you doing watching this video in the first place? Anyway, thankfully though, it's not quite such a big problem as I just said, and now we're going to talk about how to fix it. So what we're talking about here is this mating surface between the caliper and where the frame meets the caliper. It could just be that the gap in between here needs cleaning. It could be that there's some excess paint left over from when your bike was manufactured, or it could be that the frame material itself is not quite level and needs cutting and facing flat. It's also worth noting that when we take the caliper off, you need to make sure that the opposing side, so the caliper or the caliper mounting plate, is also flat and clean as well. So first thing we're going to talk about is cleaning this surface up. With the caliper removed, it's a case of visually inspecting the underside of the caliper to make sure there's no paint or anything causing the surface to not sit flat, and then do exactly the same on the face of the frame. Now here you can see that there's no high spots of paint and it's all clear and free. If you were to find there is some paint left over from the manufacturing process, the easiest and quickest solution to do is to get some abrasive paper and a hard flat block and simply gently and carefully rub away at that high spot of paint to make sure you're only removing paintwork and you're not removing any of the frame material itself. Once you've cleaned up the two surfaces and are happy everything looks clean and flat, which is the most important part to get right, you can refit the caliper, refit the wheel, centralize the caliper, torque the bolts up correctly, and then give the bike a check to make sure the brake isn't rubbing. If it's not rubbing, happy days, good for you. You can hit the road and enjoy your bike again. If it is still rubbing, well, that's where this bad boy comes in. It's the Park Tools DT-5.2, the disc brake mount facing set, or the Kit de Surface Support Frein à Disc. This bad boy is going to allow you to actually face and cut off some of the material on the frame to make sure both of the surfaces are parallel and at the right angle to the through axle and parallel to the disc. Let's get the kit, fit it on the bike and show you how it works. Now this is quite an expensive bit of kit, so let's be clear, the majority of people are not going to have or buy something like this for home, unless of course you are a super bike mechanic nerd. Otherwise, it's probably going to be a trip down to your friendly local bike shop for them to do the job for you. But nonetheless, seeing how this kit works, I think is really fascinating, and it's good to have an understanding of what it is that's actually happening and needs to be done to your bike to make it work correctly. So let's get this bad boy fitted onto the bike. First steps are to remove the wheel and remove the caliper. Now place the main body of the tool onto the correct axle adapter for your bike before assembling the tool loosely so it can be set to the correct angle to the axle and the frame by placing the supplied studs in place of the caliper bolt holes on the frame. Position the tool to sit flush on those studs and then tighten the bolt on the arm first and then the bolt on the axle. Once the axle bolt is tight, you can undo the arm bolt to position the cutting tool over one of the mounting faces. Then it's a case of applying some cutting fluid and gently pressing down on the tool at the same time as rotating it. This needs to be done very gradually and very carefully, and the goal here is to remove as little material as possible. Regularly stop and check the frame face to make sure you're not removing more material than you need to, and then reset the tool for the other bolt face and repeat the process of rotating the tool and taking away a small amount of material. As I said initially, this isn't the kind of job that many people are going to be doing at home, but nonetheless, I think it's important to have an understanding of what's going on and what it is you're trying to achieve. Now, brake facing is always going to need to be done at the point of manufacture and should be done in the factory, but it doesn't mean there aren't going to be a few bikes that slip through the net made with a little bit of excess paint, or just the brake face surface itself isn't actually sat quite right. But now that we know how to fix it, it isn't really a big deal to get sat just right. And also, in case you're wondering, the brake face surface on my brand new Canyon was actually fine. I just used it to demo it. Now, once you are happy that you've got the surface flat and nice and clean and everything looks good and you haven't taken too much material off, it's just a case of removing the tool, which is reversing the process of how you fitted it, and then set to fitting the caliper back onto the bike, centralizing it to make sure it doesn't rub, which it shouldn't do now that you've done this, and check everything's tightened, torqued up to specifications, and then you're ready to hit the road and enjoy your perfectly working brakes. There you go, that's how to fix your rubbing disc brakes, and also how to face the brake caliper mounting surface on your frame. Now, do let me know in the comments section down below if this is a job you've ever tried doing at home. I'm keen to hear your thoughts on it as well. And well, if you want to see more cool bike tech related videos, subscribe to GCN Tech and turn on your notifications. Right, I'm out of here to enjoy my perfectly working brakes. Goodbye.